What if, like, all the stories we know have these, like, hidden chapters? Like,
Sure.
think about this book, the Book of Enoch.
Good.
A text pulled from the Bible's pages way back in 325 AD.
Yeah.
And yet it's brimming with wild stuff.
Right.
The beginnings of demons, fallen angels called the Nephilim, and prophecies that just totally bend your mind.
Oh, wait.
It really makes you wonder what secrets those ancient scrolls were holding, doesn't it?
It certainly does spark curiosity.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we're going to be exploring today.
Right.
Forget all those debates about Scripture for a moment.
Uh-huh.
Our focus is on the Book of Enoch itself,
Okay.
alongside some really compelling scholarly work.
Okay.
To understand its enduring appeal and what its significance might have been back then in its time,
Yeah.
we're aiming for a clear, insightful journey through the essential ideas without getting too bogged down
Right.
in every detail.
That's right. Your mission, should you choose to continue listening, and clearly you have, is to uncover the most fascinating insights into Enoch's unique role
Right.
concerning all of these heavenly mysteries.
Mm-hmm.
We're also going to unravel why this book, packed with all this cosmic drama, ended up on the outside looking in
Yeah.
when the biblical canon took shape.
It's so interesting.
Yeah, so think of it as gaining deep knowledge efficiently.
I like that.
So who was this Enoch who held such intriguing secrets?
That is the perfect place to start.
Yeah.
So within the biblical family tree,
Okay.
Enoch is the great-grandfather of Noah.
Wow. Okay.
But the stories woven around him go far beyond just genealogy.
Right.
He's traditionally seen as a writer,
Okay.
someone who understood the stars, an astrologer,
Interesting.
a prophet, and a figure renowned for his wisdom.
So like a real Renaissance man of the ancient world, it sounds like.
He really is an intriguing figure.
And then there's that incredibly concise and rather odd verse in Genesis 5.24.
Right.
It says, Enoch walked faithfully with God. Then he was no more because God took him away.
Yes.
It's so different from the usual.
Totally.
And he died.
Right.
That little snippet just hints at something extraordinary.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
And the Book of Enoch takes that hint and really runs with it. It expands on that brief verse,
Yeah.
portraying Enoch as this kind of cosmic record keeper,
Mm.
entrusted with heavenly secrets.
Wow.
He's depicted as a messenger, tasked with speaking to fallen angels,
Okay.
and as a prophet with visions of the future.
Okay, we're off to an intriguing start. Now let's dive into these watchers, the fallen angels. What's their story according to the Book of Enoch?
In some ways, that's a very fitting description.
Yeah.
The Book of Enoch describes the Watchers as angels,
Okay.
who were initially given a very critical responsibility
Okay.
to guide and observe humanity.
To guide and observe. Okay.
However, they succumbed to this very powerful temptation.
Okay.
They desired human women.
They desired human women.
As detailed in Enoch chapter 6, verse 2. This desire of the Watchers for human women
Okay.
really reveals this fascinating tension in ancient cosmology.
Interesting.
The potential for even divine beings to be swayed by earthly desires,
Right.
suggesting a universal struggle with temptation that resonates even today.
That's a really good point. Angels falling for humans, that's a pretty significant deviation from their heavenly duties.
Right.
What were the repercussions of these forbidden relationships?
The Book of Enoch tells us that their unions resulted in the birth of the Nephilim,
The Nephilim.
a race of giants.
Okay, so these beings weren't benevolent, right?
But exactly no.
Yeah.
Instead, they brought widespread chaos and corruption upon the earth.
So not exactly gentle giants then, more like agents of destruction. And it wasn't just their size that was the problem, was it? I recall reading something about them sharing knowledge with humans
Yes.
that they shouldn't have possessed.
Precisely.
Yeah.
The Book of Enoch meticulously details the various transgressions
Okay.
of the Watchers, and a significant one was the imparting of forbidden knowledge to humanity.
Oh, okay.
This included instruction in crafting weapons, the practices of sorcery,
Sure.
the secrets of metallurgy,
Okay.
astrology, alchemy,
Alchemy.
and even the creation of cosmetics.
Cosmetics. Wow.
And remember, in the ancient world,
Yeah.
astrology wasn't just horoscopes.
Right.
It was a complex system of understanding celestial influences, believed to hold significant power,
Right.
a power the Watchers were sharing inappropriately.
Okay.
This paints a picture of a corrupted transfer of divine understanding.
Basically, they opened Pandora's box, and the results were catastrophic. So
Yep.
what became of these wayward angels? Did they just get a stern talking to?
Not at all. The Book of Enoch vividly describes God's judgment
Okay.
upon the Watchers.
Okay.
They were bound in chains and cast into darkness,
Wow.
awaiting their final punishment. The
Mm.
very stark portrayal of divine justice for disrupting the cosmic and earthly order.
Okay, so the Watchers were definitely facing some serious consequences. But how does Enoch fit back into this picture? He wasn't one of the rebellious angels, was he?
No.
His connection to heavenly mysteries seems to be very different.
Exactly. This is a crucial distinction.
Right.
While the Watchers illicitly gained and disseminated knowledge,
Uh-huh.
Enoch's access to similar heavenly secrets was divinely sanctioned.
Divinely sanctioned.
He didn't learn from earthly sources
Okay.
or through forbidden means.
Okay.
Instead, he embarked on these otherworldly journeys
Interesting.
to directly witness these phenomena himself.
Wow. Okay.
So against this backdrop of rebellious angels
Right.
and corrupted knowledge,
Uh-huh.
we have Enoch,
Yeah.
who offers this contrasting figure accessing heavenly wisdom
Okay.
in a divinely approved way.
So while the Watchers were essentially stealing glances and sharing secrets they shouldn't, Enoch was getting the authorized all-access tour with divine approval. That's a fundamental difference. And these journeys weren't just celestial sightseeing trips, right?
Absolutely not.
They had a specific purpose related to understanding the structure and order of the cosmos.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The Book of Enoch portrays these journeys as a means for Enoch
Okay.
to gain this firsthand understanding of cosmological phenomena.
Okay.
She wasn't relying on secondhand accounts
Right.
or earthly interpretations.
Yeah.
He traversed through various heavens,
Various heavens.
with each realm revealing distinct aspects of the cosmos.
Mm.
It's almost as if the narrative of his travels
Yeah.
mirrors the cosmological understanding, or at least the conceptualization of the universe at the time these texts were written.
That's a fascinating idea, the layout of heaven as a reflection of their understanding of the universe. So what kind of secrets was Enoch privy to during these celestial excursions?
He witnessed a vast array of heavenly mysteries.
Like what?
This included the very places where the stars and other luminaries have their dwellings,
Okay.
the chambers where thunder originates and the expanses of the ether.
Wow.
He observed the operations of fire,
Okay.
the paths of lightning,
Lightning.
and the nature of celestial forces.
Hmm.
He also gained profound insights into the calculations and precise measurements of astronomical bodies.
Wow. It sounds like a cosmic observatory. And Enoch was the privileged astronomer. He wasn't just gazing at the stars, he was learning their precise mechanics, their underlying principles. What else did he encounter on these journeys?
His travels also revealed the treasuries of the winds,
Winds, okay.
demonstrating how these forces govern all aspects of creation.
Okay.
He was shown the fundamental structures and cornerstones of the earth,
Mm.
and the four winds that support both the planet and the firmament of heaven.
Wow.
He was granted visions of the mountains,
Okay.
containing precious stones, metals, and diverse forms of vegetation.
Wow.
Even specific details like colored stone, pearl, jasper, flame-colored stone, antimony, and lapis lazuli.
Wow, so specific.
It's as if he was seeing the blueprints of creation.
It sounds incredibly detailed, almost like a divine inventory of the universe and its resources. And Enoch wasn't just a passive observer taking notes, was he? He had a more active role in documenting all of this.
Precisely.
Yeah.
The texts emphasize Enoch's active involvement
Okay.
in recording, measuring, counting, and even weighing
Wow.
these cosmological phenomena.
Okay.
For instance, 1 Enoch 33.2 explicitly describes how, with the angel Uriel as his guide, Enoch meticulously counted and wrote down detailed information about the stars.
Okay.
Their names, their inherent laws, their groupings, their specific ranks, their designated locations, their cyclical periods, and their assigned months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Uriel, whose name I believe means light of God,
It does.
seems to have been an absolutely key figure in all of this, like his personal celestial guide and knowledge translator.
Exactly. The angel Uriel served as his vital guide and revealer of these profound mysteries to Enoch.
Hmm.
His name, Light of God, is particularly fitting,
Right.
given his association with the heavenly luminaries.
Yeah, I see that.
And this divinely sanctioned knowledge that Enoch received
Uh-huh.
was understood as a crucial way to counteract the corrupting influence
Okay.
spread by the Watchers
The Watchers.
and to restore the proper cosmic balance.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like Enoch was receiving the correct, divinely authorized version of the very information that the Watchers had illicitly obtained and then misused.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense in terms of narrative and purpose. Now, let's delve into this fascinating connection you mentioned earlier between cosmology and ethics.
Yeah.
How did these early Enochic writings link the order of the universe to moral behavior?
This is a truly illuminating aspect.
Yeah.
Early Enochic writings viewed the ordered structure of the cosmos,
Okay.
the predictable and consistent movements of celestial bodies,
Right.
as direct reflections of divine law. Think of it almost like cosmological halakot, cosmic commandments.
Interesting.
That dictated the very structure and function of the universe.
Okay.
The underlying idea was that the universe itself embodied God's moral will.
So the stars following their precise paths weren't just performing a celestial dance, they were actively adhering to divine instructions.
Exactly.
Wow.
1 Enoch 18.15 even connects the transgression of stars,
Okay.
if they were to deviate from their appointed times,
Right.
to a violation of God's command.
A violation of God's command.
It suggests a very direct and profound correlation
Okay.
between cosmic order
Uh-huh.
and obedience to divine law.
Hmm.
This idea that the very movement of the stars
Yeah.
embodies divine law offers a profound insight
Right.
into how ancient societies viewed the universe, not as a separate mechanistic entity,
Okay.
but as intrinsically linked to morality.
Right, right.
A disruption in the cosmos
Yeah.
would then be seen as a direct consequence of,
Mm.
or a reflection of moral disorder.
That's a powerful way of seeing the universe as this grand, perfectly operating system that mirrors God's ethical framework. And it wasn't solely about the stars, was it?
No.
I seem to recall a connection between calendars and righteousness.
That's correct.
That's a-
The Book of Jubilees, for instance,
To be believed. Okay.
strongly emphasizes Enoch's deep understanding
Okay.
of calendrical patterns
Yeah.
and the mysteries of divine judgment
Right.
tied to those cycles.
Okay.
It explicitly links
Yeah.
the precise measurements of the calendar
Okay.
to divine commandments,
It's interesting. Okay.
maintaining a correct understanding and adherence to the proper calendar was seen as an act of righteousness,
Righteousness.
while incorrect calculations
Okay.
were associated with sin
Sin.
and deviation from divine order.
Wow. Okay.
Passages like 1 Enoch 82.4 and related texts reinforce this idea,
Okay.
suggesting that even something as seemingly technical as a calendar
Right.
holds significant ethical implications.
So, getting your celestial calendar right wasn't just about knowing when to plant crops. It was about aligning yourself with the fundamental divine order of the cosmos. That's a really holistic and integrated worldview. Now, let's shift to Enoch's direct interactions with the Watchers themselves. Was he just receiving knowledge, or did he have any direct dealings with these fallen angels?
He did indeed.
He did. Okay.
The Book of Enoch recounts how the Watchers, recognizing Enoch's exceptional righteousness and his close relationship with the divine,
Okay.
actually implored him to intercede with God on their behalf,
Wow.
earnestly seeking forgiveness
Forgiveness.
for the serious transgressions.
The very beings who had strayed so far from their divine purpose were asking a human to plead their case to God. That's a rather dramatic turn of events. And how did Enoch respond to their desperate plea?
Enoch took on the role of a messenger,
Okay.
conveying God's judgment,
To the fallen Watchers.
while the texts indicate that he did pray for them.
He did.
Ultimately, God's judgment remained firm,
Okay.
and they were condemned.
Condemned.
Enoch himself had visions of their imprisonment,
Wow.
vividly describing them as pillars of fire descending into a deep and terrifying chasm awaiting their final reckoning.
So he was placed in this incredibly difficult position, caught between the pleas of the fallen angels and the unyielding judgment of God. It sounds like an immense spiritual burden to carry. Now let's address the big question that I'm sure is on everyone's mind. If the Book of Enoch contains all these fascinating insights and was even referenced in the New Testament, why was it ultimately excluded from the official biblical canon?
There are several interconnected and significant reasons for its exclusion.
Okay.
One primary factor was the lack of consistent and explicit recognition by Jesus and the apostles
Okay.
as divinely inspired scripture.
Okay.
Well, as you mentioned, the Book of Jude does quote from Enoch.
Yeah.
This single reference wasn't universally interpreted as a full endorsement of its canonicity, in the same way as other Old Testament texts.
So the ultimate stamp of approval from the central figures of Christianity was largely absent for the Book of Enoch. That certainly seems like a major hurdle for canonization. What other factors contributed to its being left out?
The Book of Enoch also presents theological concepts
Okay.
and narratives that either diverge from
Okay.
or significantly elaborate
Okay.
upon the accepted scriptures.
Okay. What do you mean?
For example, the detailed and extensive accounts
Uh-huh.
of the relationships between angels and humans
Okay.
and the origins and nature of the Nephilim
The Nephilim, right.
are far more developed
Okay.
than what we find in the Book of Genesis.
Right.
Furthermore, the concept of multiple heaven,
Responsible heavens.
as described in detail within Enoch,
Right.
wasn't the prevailing view
Okay.
in early Christian theological thought.
Theological thought.
Additionally, there were perceived inconsistencies
Okay.
in the descriptions and roles of angels when compared to other established scriptural texts.
So its narrative content and its theological framework didn't always align neatly with the developing biblical narrative and accepted doctrines. That could definitely have raised concerns for those involved in defining the canon. Were there also questions surrounding who actually authored the book?
Yes, doubts regarding its authorship and historical authenticity
Mm.
constituted another significant reason for its exclusion.
What is its exclusion?
Scholars recognized relatively early on
Okay.
that the Book of Enoch, in its extant form,
Right.
was written much later than the time of the biblical Enoch.
Oh, wow. Okay.
This raised serious questions about its direct authority
Okay.
and claim to divine inspiration.
I see.
If it wasn't directly from Enoch,
Right.
its weight as a divinely inspired text was significantly diminished.
Right. If it wasn't penned by Enoch himself,
Right.
its claim to carry his unique, divinely granted insights becomes considerably less persuasive. What about its standing within Judaism, the religious tradition from which Christianity emerged?
The Book of Enoch was also excluded from the Jewish Torah,
Hmm.
and over time came to be considered a non-canonical
Okay.
and even heretical text
Heretical. Wow.
by rabbinic Judaism,
Okay.
because its teachings and narratives weren't in accordance with their interpretations
Okay.
and understanding of the core teachings of the Torah.
The Torah.
This rejection by its parent tradition undoubtedly had a substantial influence on early Christian perspectives
Okay.
regarding its value and inclusion in their sacred texts.
So it lacked the endorsement of both the key figures of Christianity and the central texts of Judaism. That's a pretty compelling case for exclusion. Were there any other reservations about the book's content itself?
Yes, some religious authorities
Okay.
held concerns about its heavily mystical
Okay.
and speculative nature,
Speculative. Okay.
the intense focus on angelic beings,
Okay.
the rebellion against divine order,
Good.
and the vivid, almost fantastical descriptions of the spiritual realm may have been viewed by some as overly imaginative
Okay.
or potentially misleading.
Hmm.
They generally favored texts believed to be more directly inspired
Right.
and more consistent
Okay.
with the core foundational messages of their scriptures.
So it sounds like a convergence of factors, questions of its authority, its content diverging from established scripture, doubts about its actual authorship, its rejection within Jewish tradition, and reservations about its mystical nature all contributed to the Book of Enoch being ultimately left out of the biblical canon. It's a complex history, to say the least, highlighting the careful and often debated processes involved in shaping religious texts.
It is indeed a complex history,
Yeah.
and it underscores the significant discernment
Right.
and theological considerations that were integral
Okay.
to the formation of the biblical canon as we know it today.
Well, we've certainly journeyed into the deep mystery surrounding the Book of Enoch today.
We have.
We've explored how Enoch was viewed as this unique recipient of divine knowledge, a divinely appointed counterpoint to the transgressions of the fallen watchers.
Right.
And we've unpacked the primary reasons why his book didn't ultimately find its place within the biblical canon. So what's the key thing for you, our listener, to take away from this fascinating exploration?
What's truly thought-provoking here
Yeah.
is to consider the intricate processes
Okay.
involved in interpreting these ancient texts
Mm,
and the historical development of religious canons.
right.
Enoch, with his extraordinary access to divine knowledge
Yeah.
and the multitude of reasons
Yeah.
for his book's exclusion,
Right.
raise a fundamental question for you to ponder.
Okay.
Considering these complexities,
Yeah.
Could there still be valuable insights,
Mm,
perhaps even challenging perspectives,
okay.
to be gleaned from such marginalized works,
Mm,
even if they are considered sacred scripture?
right.
What does this tell you about the inherent limitations and evolving nature of religious authority and the ongoing human quest for understanding the divine?
That's a really compelling question.
It really is.
One that encourages us to think critically
Yes.
about the texts that shape our understanding. If this deep dive into the Book of Enoch has sparked your intellectual curiosity, we strongly encourage you to delve further into it and explore the rich landscape of related scholarly discussions. There's a vast and fascinating world of ancient literature out there, often just beyond the familiar, waiting to be discovered. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the mysteries of Enoch.
It's been a pleasure.